want to get into how, since all of you have taken different paths in order to get where you are, I'll toss this to you first, Felix. How you how you promote yourself as an artist, and advice that you can give to aspiring artists, people who are listening to this or watching and want to get into cover
Yeah,
design.
I I honestly at this point I feel like I sold my soul to the devil, and that's where because it's I don't. So the way I started was doing fan art and putting on online, on social media. Like I like a book, I always liked that stuff. When I was a kid, I would do D&D and Lord of the Rings, stuff like that. And then with the indie industry, after I read Abercrombie, I started reading all these other people. Joe Abercrombie. Then I started reading all the indies, and like, oh, this is so amazing. I started doing fan art and just posting it, and that was my marketing. And then when they started hiring me, well, I would post the cover. So that's the marketing, and then word of mouth took over. So it's a mix of I just post my stuff on Facebook and ArtStation, and that's it. That's pretty much. I don't really do ads. I don't. It's a long process though. It took a few years to take off, but it happened so organically that it gave me time to develop and make connections and I guess make a reputation. And that was pretty much it. It was like a slow process, but marketing itself, that's it. That's pretty much what I did. Yeah.
It's like word of mouth type thing, right?
And I guess word of mouth for newer artists, I feel like you really have to put a lot of time on education and practice. Like I would spend hours of the day just watching videos online of the pros, like buying Gumroad. They have the tutorials or there's like right now. When I was a kid back in the 80s, there was not even internet. Now you can buy a class online and just watch the whole thing. Like they're just everything you need is online. And I would say if you're starting out, watch, practice, learn, make connections with other artists and professionals, if you can, and put yourself out there. And I think it's a long process. For some people it takes less, I guess, but I think it's you really have to want to be an artist because there's so many people out there doing the same thing. So it's you really have to have grit and focus, and you really want to have learn and self edit, like look at your work and say, hey, this can be better. Like don't be happy where you at or just a little degree higher. Look up to the great artists, and if you're halfway that level, great, but look, like point all the way up. That's the only way, I think.
Yeah, and Daniel, you've touched on this as well. Just grit, hard work, have a passion for it. You don't have to be a wise old man or anything like that, but really dedicate yourself to learning. Does anyone else want to share how they promote themselves in this space, but also advice for uh, aspiring artists and people who want to get involved in all this? If anyone wants to jump in.
I'll go. Oh,
Okay.
no, go ahead, Priscilla.
Go ahead. I think it's going to be a bit rambling. So
Okay. Well,
Alyssa, and then Priscilla afterwards.
okay. I'm terrible at marketing myself on social media. People have no idea who I am. It's not great. I was really fortunate. I got my start in book covers because of a portfolio review I did at a convention with one of my future art directors, Irene Gallo. And kind of what Felix was saying is like education is so much more accessible than ever before. And I think a lot of industry professionals actually are very accessible. I've seen so many opportunities for not just like art directors looking for artist specific portfolio reviews, but just random artists in the industry are really generous and host portfolio reviews. So if you want to get a sense of where your if it's hard for you to be like, where am I compared to those great artists, getting some professional eyes for specifically the corner of the industry that you really want to, because there's different standards for all different sections. So seeking out one of those professionals and being like, hey, like, being polite, of course, can you take a look and give me some hints? Like, that stuff is really great. And I think also getting comfortable with asking questions of all the people around you. Like, once you're in the industry, like, they are your resources. All the people around you, they know so much. And usually everybody's really, really nice. So definitely ask those questions, and also ask questions of yourself. I find, and I still do this. Like, a lot of times I'll look at my art, and I'll be like, well, that's bad, but like thinking about like why it's bad, and being like, why am I unsatisfied with this? I often see folks kind of get in a rut where they're just like making the same mistakes for years, instead of like really stopping and like turning on the critique brain you use on other people's art on your own art, and being specific and not just getting down on yourself, but being constructive about it. So that's my advice, no matter where you are, skill wise.
I think that applies to life in general. Just learn how to critique yourself and learn from your mistakes and move forward with a better attitude and a better approach. Priscilla, you want to go for it?
Self-knowledge is the greatest gift you can give yourself, I think.
Exactly.
But on top of everything else that was said, I think also goal setting and kind of figuring out what you want to do and what specifically you're aiming for really helps a lot. And I know it's not always an easy question to answer, especially if you have a lot of different interests and you like a lot of things, but kind of figuring out what you like to do, which may not be the same thing as what you like to look at, honestly, is, I think, pretty important for figuring out where you want to go. And for me, I honestly can't really trace how I got to where I am. I think a lot of it was just going to in-person meetings and conventions and making friends with people and doing portfolio reviews, and occasionally people would keep my contact info. And at a certain point, I don't know where people are finding me. They just show up in my email inbox. So, yeah, I've mostly been able to, I think, get where I am because I've been able to take courses with very accessible and very knowledgeable mentors and peers. And I think the peers part is important as well. You don't want to just like pursue knowledge from people who are way above you. You also want to make friends with people who are at your similar level, so you can help each other up and take advantage of everything that is out there. There's so much free stuff. I do think the kids these days are actually benefiting from that, though, because I feel like I keep seeing younger and younger people who are amazing.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, but it's also...
I will also say...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, one more thing. I do sometimes feel like I see an overemphasis on social media presence as being a key part of success, and I do think it can be a marker of success or a path to success, but it's not the only one, certainly. I have very few followers. I'm not good at social media either, or self-promotion. But,
I think follower count, a lot of the time, it doesn't count for nothing. It's not like, it counts for shit, but it doesn't count for everything, And so you bring up a good point there. Don't assume that the amount of followers that you have on ArtStation or Instagram or Twitter or whatever counts for so much, because a lot of that can be artificial. There are bots out there, but there are also people who pay for followers. So don't just assume. But you also touched on resources. I think, yes, there's an immense amount of resources of tutorials and stuff on YouTube, stuff that's free, or paid classes on different online education platforms. But another thing is the accessibility of technology and the stuff that people can actually use to draw. It doesn't necessarily mean like, you have to go to an art store and know everything about every different medium. It's like you can get an iPad and an Apple Pencil and just create. I think Procreate is $10 or something like that. It's nothing. And so the accessibility to art technology is unbelievably advanced compared to when we were kids. So it's like, doesn't matter what age you are, you can, if you have the means to get that kind of stuff, you know. But then it comes down to, if you just have a pencil and a piece of paper, you can already start too. So the entrance to art is endless. And Luke, if you want to share a little bit about your experience with promoting yourself, but then also advice for those who are looking to get into the game.
I'm the worst person to ask about that.
Don't laugh, man. Take yourself seriously.
I do take myself seriously, but I'm being honest. I just kind of stumble into things, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think as far as promotion goes, you know, being your most genuine is always going to help. Especially, you know, like, and this touches back on the social media thing too. Like, it comes down to, like I said, being genuine. You don't want to be one of those people who's just constantly like spams. Like, people want to, you know, interact with an actual person, have conversations. And I think just, you know, making connections. And I think that sort of touches in the writing too, with the writing community, is don't look at, you can look at other people's resources, which, you know, in professions they are, but you don't want to look at them as like, you know, rungs on a ladder. You want to make personal connections, not just like use people. Meaningful connections. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, because doing this podcast is the kind of thing where I have made so many meaningful connections, and it's not like, oh, this author is so big and I want to have them on the podcast for the name recognition or some crap like that. But it's like, no, it's more about the content they produce. You know, with all of you, it's the content you produce and the genuine nature through which you put it out into the world. And I really appreciate that. And Daniel, since you're the most experienced here, if you want to share a little bit about your promotion. I guess at this point, a lot of people are coming to you as opposed to you promoting yourself, but also advice for newcomers to the industry.
Yeah, for you, other than a few short interruptions or gaps between jobs in the past, I've always been employed full time. Therefore, I only had limited time for freelance work, and I was lucky enough to get enough work to fill my weekends. Never really had the need to promote myself. That being said, as far as social media presence, I other than ArtStation, I don't do Facebook, I don't do Instagram, I don't do any of that. I'm a big believer in networking, especially encourage young artists to network, but network selectively, and pay attention to the feedback you get, and don't get too confident simply because you get hundreds of thumbs up and hearts and smileys on whatever, because and praises on any forums, because it's very likely that the majority of them come from 12-year-olds who have no clue what they're talking about, and they get excited and go gaga over anything, and just shower people with praises. Rather, identify a few people you look up to and try to seek their genuine feedback and make that type of meaningful contact. As far as access to information and as internet as a resource, it is absolutely mind-blowing, and its depth is endless. That being said, it's a mixed blessing. It can be confusing. There can be too many conflicting influences and temptations, and oh my God, there's this style and which way should I go? And also same thing applies to all these tutorials, where every every one you watch, you're like, oh my God, that's what I should do. I don't think that's the right attitude towards, self-improvement, but rather, as Alyssa was saying, honing your critical thinking and absorbing as much, but then with a critical eye. Don't be just a consumer, but an analyst, a critical thinker, and deconstruct what you're seeing and assemble out of the building blocks that you extract, assemble your own system of values and your own philosophy and the style. Your own style will become the natural expression of that. There's, nowadays, with, as you said, with an iPad and a pen and a $10 piece of software, you can you get the entry level into this world of artistic expression. But that shouldn't that's not enough to call yourself an artist. And there's it's a mixed blessing. I mean, on one hand, the access to information and to learning is there, but on the other hand, you have to overcome the noise and the millions of people who are out there, making noise, adding to the noise, and basically drowning the talent in this noise, and learning to swim to the surface of this noise is really challenging. There's I get portfolios every day, not one but multiple portfolios of people who want to get a foot in the door, and it is mind-blowing how high the percentage of people who have no business owning a pencil. They should have restraining orders from pencils. I worry that they may hurt themselves. Make sure it's not too sharp for you, because it's just really. So I put myself in the shoes of the truly talented and hardworking one, and the fact that they have to push out of their way or whatever to kind of navigate through all this noise is just feels like an overwhelming monumental task. And so I would never in full-heartedly advise somebody, hey, try to become an artist. That's the ticket. That's the way to a good living. I can't do it, because knowing the obstacles and the hard work and the grit, and not to beat around the bushes, but the role of pure luck that it takes to succeed. So my heart goes out to them, but I wouldn't want to be 20 again in this landscape now.
Yeah. Well, does anyone have some final comments on how, I completely agree with you, Daniel, that it is a sea of noise and it's very difficult to push through, but that applies to pretty much every field, honestly. And with the hard work, with the grit, with the talent, it's not guaranteed that you will push through and make it. But does anyone have some final comments on potential means by which people could, make themselves stand out just a little bit more?
Don't, but I really have to go. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
But thank you for having me on.
Oh, Priscilla, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
Does anyone have any ideas on how artists can make themselves stand out a little bit more? Not necessarily push through all the noise, but
I guess it depends on the niche. Also, what you're looking to do has a lot of impact on being an artist. Like what I'm doing right now is there's so many of them, but if you have a style and a niche, like the Grimdark group, I feel like you just need to find it. If you want to get into gaming, like with Daniel, I think it's a lot harder, because I don't know. I think it's more of a trend to go into that field. You know, the art style at the moment. Like if you go on ArtStation, everybody. I mean, so many people. So illustration might be easier in a certain niche. I don't know. I think you just have to really dig and really research, learn. Just keep at it, you know, like really keep at it. And I think it happens. It just for some people it's faster than with others, but at some point, if you put the energy, it pays off at some point. It can be years. It can be, you know, it's subjective at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Anyone else with some final comments?
I think it's kind of related to Felix's thing about research. It's like maybe just be a person. I think when your number one passion is like looking at concept art, sometimes that can be really limiting because you're just going to regurgitate everything that you're seeing. But if your passion is, say, Russian architecture, and you just really love looking at it, learning about it, that's going to come into your work, and your work's going to look different than somebody who isn't super into Russian architecture, which again may or may not be helpful for you depending on where you're trying to go in the industry. But like, I think having interests and hobbies and things you're excited about learning that's not just art, I think is helpful. You know, I've known people who don't have interest outside of art who do great, but I think just generally it's probably good for your mental health anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's beyond good for your health. I think you're absolutely spot on. Whatever you do artistically has to be an honest, genuine expression of the things that interest and eat you alive, whatever they are. You know, when you pursue just style, indeed, it's confusing and it's superficial and it's not who you are. But as you said, be a genuine person, and you know, be vulnerable and be open to absorbing influences from the world around you, and be observant. And eventually, it will accumulate and simmer and result in this kind of, you know, primordial soup that is makes you who you are. And eventually, inevitably, you'll feel this you know, irresistible urge to share that. And if you do it honestly, you know, that's your style, that's your art, and take it or leave it. And if it's you know, if the emotions that you are sharing are of more universal, you know, relevance, then they'll resonate and you'll be successful. If your interests are very, very narrow, and whatever, you are obsessed with something that nobody else is obsessed with, then you'll be your only fan. But the bottom line is, it has to be sincere and genuine and come from inside.